And we're on. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Leisure and Environment Committee, being broadcast live on YouTube and as a Teams meeting to members. We should have with us tonight myself, Councillor Roger Jackson, Chairman of the Leisure and Environment Committee, Vice Chairman, Councillor Neil Myson, along with Councillor Carlton, Councillor Cope, Councillor Cumbridge, Councillor Harris, Councillor Hurst, Councillor Lee and Councillor Woodhead. They are members on this committee tonight. And Catherine, I believe we have apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got Councillor Mrs Dawn, Councillor Brailsford and Councillor Lawton. Unfortunately, we've been trying to contact Councillor Cope, but unfortunately we can't get through at the moment, Chairman. Okay, well, if you do, he can join us during the proceedings. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, any declarations of interest or of intention to record the meeting by anyone? We are doing so as a committee. Nobody? I mean, if anybody needs to make an indication, because I can't see many faces, I'm working from home, so I ask you to raise your hands, please, and I'll try and see them on the screen so people can make a comment. Minutes of the meeting held on 22nd September. Does that mean everybody's happy with those?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chairman.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Move on to Chairman's report. Well, members, this is now a regular update on major developments within the committee's remit since our last meeting in September. Needless to say, the response of COVID-19 has continued to affect services within our responsibility. I'm sure members will be aware that the national restrictions have meant that our leisure centres have had to close once more. Andy Carolan, the Managing Director of Active for Today, will be able to give us an update later on the agenda in relation to the impact this is having on the business and its finances. Even before the national restrictions, the relegations on both Tier 2 and 3 were having a detrimental impact, and we were therefore being closely monitoring what the exit plan from the national restrictions looked like after December the 2nd. During October, colleagues from the Public Protection were heavily involved in supporting businesses across Newark and Sherwood help meet the new requirements that Tier 2 brought to their operations. This also involved joint work with colleagues from the police to undertake weekend visits to pubs to ensure that they were operating in line with the new regulations. And whilst the vast majority were, one pub was issued with an enforcement notice. Again, the team will be closely monitoring the exit plan post December the 2nd, as they are likely to be involved once more in ensuring compliance with whatever replacement regulations we are faced with. But despite the operational challenges that COVID continues to bring, I'm pleased to be able to inform you about the number of positive developments which have been achieved. 4 of the council's parks, which are maintained by the council's ground maintenance team, have been awarded green flags status once again. We are rightly proud of our parks and open spaces, and this reward shows that the Castle Gardens, Scunthorne Devon, Vicar Water and Sherwood Heath are being looked after to the highest standards by our team. On the agenda tonight is a paper recommending that spaces within the HRA land are looked after once more by the council. I think this is a great opportunity to ensure greater consistency in standard and better accountability for more of the open spaces we be looked after. We also continue to make good progress with the new pool at the Dukeridge Leisure Centre in Ollerton. We are currently on programme to complete the works in June next year. And this week, we will hit another milestone as the steel for the superstructure are set to go in and be erected. This will make the development even more real for the community in what will be a very, very positive facility for the local people of Ollerton and surrounds. And finally, I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to the report on the council's climate emergency strategy and action plan, which will go to full council on December the 15th. Once approved, a number of interventions that are proposed to reduce the council's carbon footprint will be the gift of this committee, including the reduction of the footprint from the council's biggest emitters, which are our leisure centres. And I look forward to receiving a report of next year setting out how we're going to achieve this, and hopefully the committee and new members know we can actually be involved in achieving the carbon reduction of the council in these areas. Thank you. Has anybody any questions on that? If not, thank you. We'll move on to part one items for decision. I will say now that item 12 on the agenda, grounds maintenance of HRA land, is now not an exempt item, and I intend to take that at after item 7, the fly tipping action plan, because it is a paper for decisions to be made. Okay, Andy, are you taking us on active for today? Oh, sorry, Scott. Scott Carlton. Scott, you want to ask a question? Sorry.
It's just a quick one, and I think it may have been my internet connection, but agenda item number 2, the declarations of interest by members. I'd just like to declare a personal interest in agenda item 6, as I am a director of Active for Today.
Thank you for that, Scott. I probably missed that in my going through the agenda. I apologise. Okay, is there anybody else any declarations to be made? No. Okay, thank you for that. So we move to agenda item 6, Active for Today performance update and draft business plan. Is that me, Mr. Carolan? Is Andy Carolan with us? Oh, there he is.
Started.
Chairman, if I may, I'll walk members through the report, the covering report, and Andy's here as usual to take any questions specifically to Active for Today business decisions, etc.
Okay. Sorry, okay. Andy, I thought, okay, that's fine, lovely, thank you.
No problem. So thank you, Chairman. So yes, as is customary, we are bringing an update report to Leisure and Environment for member consideration. It follows the normal format, and this particular meeting cycle will consider the draft business plan that's proposed for next year, and it is effectively becoming more of a recovery plan, I think it's fair to say, in terms of stabilising the business of Active and its offer, and looking at ways to recover the membership base. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail, if that's okay. And it is covered in the report at paragraphs 319 to 322. There are some accompanying appendices to the report, which is the product of Andy's managing director with Active, which always accompanies the headline report for members. And I'll proceed, if that's okay, just to provide a summary of some of the key factors that members need to be aware of. So in the first instance, in terms of key issues, members will be aware that in September a report was received that outlined the forecast position by the company to year end, and given the circumstances and impacts of COVID, the anticipated forecast year end was going to be a deficit of £690,000, and members considered a report to provide some support through COVID funding from government to help the company through this difficult period, and £490,000 was earmarked towards the company on a drawdown basis as the business proceeded. At that time, I think the positivity of the company was that they were experiencing, or anticipating, should I say, a reduction in membership, which was not to be unexpected, of around about 10%. But unfortunately, that situation has worsened as we've got as we've moved through the COVID challenge and the reopening of the centre, which I'll talk about, and the associated impact of losses in membership. In the round, there's been further losses experienced around membership and pay to play activities that are highlighted in paragraph 3.2. But I think significantly, the table at 3.2 is one that members should focus on in terms of the headline figures. The central column, the full year revised figure to 31st of October 2020, is showing a significant reduction in income due to the closure and then subsequent reduced operational activity due to safe systems of work and COVID impacts. And the forecast variance was at 1.1 million. It's not all bad news, because as well as a loss of income, there are some potential savings, and they're highlighted in the table around staff, premises, supplies and services, which realised a saving of 645,000. So the net variance based on initial outturn forecast has deteriorated to a position of 735,000 deficit, which is 45,000 worse than was forecast with the September report. And that's due to the fact that obviously the impacts of COVID have reduced operating hours, so on and so forth. In terms of paragraphs 3, 4, etc., there's a little bit of detail there that covers off some of those areas, and in essence, we are in a position now where the centres are closed again following the new national restrictions. So we're in a period of closure, 5th of November, and anticipated reopening of 2nd of December, which has further impacted and will continue to impact on the business activity of the centre for obvious reasons. I think we move into the next section, which is just an overview of performance and the usage figures. And I think it's important to recognise that not all of the attrition rates that are being experienced by the company are directly attributable to COVID, although it accounts for the lion's share for sure. In the report, we talk about local competition impacting the business of Active in the latter end of 2019 with the opening of a new centre. So this had an initial impact on some migration of members into the new offer. And therefore, the base figure that we started from in 2020-21 was slightly lower. That then played out through a comparison table at 3.7, which gave a snapshot of the comparison between July 2019 and that of 2020. But more importantly, the table at 3.8 now gives us a sort of true reflection of the impacts of reductions in membership as of October 2020. And as can be seen, the actual reduction in membership against target was 21%, with a loss of 1,570 members over that period, with the reality being that it was nearer 33%, with a total loss of 2,870 members across Active's offer. That is not as bad as some operators within the sector, but it's still a big hit to take with the company. However, on a positive, the membership base prior to that was very strong, so there were strong numbers. So within reason, the company has still got quite a healthy membership base, but it does need to recover it, and all efforts are going to be brought to bear to put that situation correct. In terms of actual footfall through the centre, it perhaps will come as no surprise that has been a significant reduction across the piece in terms of general numbers of footfall, specifically being experienced in some of the targeted groups. So the 60+ age group members will appreciate that the risks or potential risks to older people are amplified, and I think that has borne out in terms of the amounts of older people that have chosen to avoid coming to the centre for the duration of the initial impact of COVID. Similarly with young people as well, there's been quite a significant drop in junior footfall. Again, symptomatic of the position that is facing not just Active but every leisure sector operation nationally. Moving into the current situation, obviously members will need to be cognizant of the fact that we are currently in a closure and we are not sure what confidence will be like when we head towards 2nd of December. Whether or not we will continue to be in some sort of local tiered arrangement, we don't know when the centres will open. That information will become apparent in the fullness of time. Having said that, on a positive note, and the chairman's already alluded to this, progress with the Duke Cruise Leisure Centre is proceeding at pace. We are on plan. Steelworks are going in. We are hopeful that the impacts of COVID will not cause any problems on the project timetable. Active are currently working on the basis of developing their marketing materials and programming plan for the centre, so that when it does eventually open, we will be able to welcome lots of new users to the centre. So in summary, in terms of the business position and finances, the situation at forecast to year end has deteriorated slightly. It's now at 735,000 deficit. That is a slight increase in that was forecast at September. And now we can move to business plan. As I said before, I refer to it as a recovery plan, and it is very much a recovery plan in terms of moving forward. It'll come as no surprise to members that it follows the three main tenets of healthy lifestyles and healthy and active lifestyles, accessible facilities and financial viability, and a number of actions are presented for member consideration, and feedback is welcomed, obviously, in terms of what is then presented to the January committee. In terms of digital implications, obviously Active are at the vanguard of technology in terms of introducing technological solutions to the offer. That continues to be the case. There are examples of contactless infrastructure being put in to improve the customer journey, to speed up processing of customers, but it also helps in terms of the COVID scenario of reducing transactions and cash payments. In terms of financial comments, they are presented in as laid out by finance colleagues for member consideration. And I move to the recommendations that are presented in for member consideration. Thank you, Chairman. Any questions?
Thanks very much for that, Andy. Yeah, and I do appreciate all the hard work of all Active today and our leisure centre staff during these difficult times to start go, and it can't be easy for them. And you know, it's hopefully by December 2nd we'll be able to start opening a bit more and having some more people through the doors and getting the leisure centres up and running, which is good for the people as well, because the mental health, I think, is very important for the users of our leisure centres. I've got four people with their hands up. I think John, you were first.
Chairman, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I've got a few questions, and if they can't be answered now, I'm happy to take them in an email if that's fine. The first question, well, the first thing, I'd just like to congratulate the team of doing everything they've been doing, especially the brand new gates at the Leisure Centre in Newark. They look superb. I don't think we're going to have many issues. They look quite sturdy. But the big question is, at the moment, I'm aware a lot of leisure centres are closed completely. But obviously, I believe Newark Active for today are still facilitating some usage, i.e. from schools to county council and that sort of thing. Are you able to tell us what is still happening at the moment, if that's suitable, and what staff we still have on retention? Just a little bit around what we're doing during COVID, because I think a lot of people presume it is shut permanently, but it isn't. We've still got some things going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. does Andy want to step in? Because apologies, Chairman, I didn't mention that the Newark Centre is still open for school swimming, but that's part of the national curriculum requirements, and that's why that has been allowed, and Newark are catering for that provision, which is good news. And you know, it's good news that there is some footfall through the centres, but equally it means that children, young people's education isn't disrupted to a level where you know, these are the things that I think children enjoy doing as much as anything else with the curriculum, and it's an opportunity for them to be physically active as well. Sorry, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do we know if that's happening at Southwell as well?
Yeah, it is, Mr. Chairman. It's Andy Carroll here. So yes, it is happening at Southwell as well. As Andy said, the restrictions were lifted for schools because schools are still operating. They allowed them, if you had either school pools or they used a pool regularly, that they would allow them to do it. So through negotiation with County Swimming, we thought it was a good offer to try and, for one, keep some income going, but also the fact that it keeps children still using the facilities. So they have been using it. The take up from schools has been pretty good. They've been in again today, because I've been on a Teams call with Martin Picker, who's been managing it on site. So feedback from the county schools is being pretty well received. So that's for so Councillor Lee to answer that. Other things that are taking place generally is the maintenance of the facilities. Still, we're still obviously putting in place. We're reviewing our COVID provisions all the time, ready for reopening. So we're just now doing a different walkthrough of the centres because we appreciate our nights are darker than when we first started this in July. It's going to be colder outside. Some of our buildings are accessing outside as part of the exit plan. So we're currently reviewing that. So hopefully when memberships will start again, we'll have a different flow around the buildings. And we're just, again, it's allowing us a bit of time to review those systems. The feedback you will note in actually the report, and unfortunately, you know, we are where we are. So if you look at the appendix, it gives you the performance report where they're all negatives. We have a massive positive in customer feedback. And I will say that's been one of the best things that come out of this. Customers have been hugely supportive. They've been very complimentary of the work we've actually done at the leisure centres, and they've been really impressed with our COVID provisions we've put in place. So that's been absolutely fantastic and well received. The other things that are taking place are things like legislative checks. That's a mouthful. So again, that's things that we have to keep maintaining within the facilities. Generally, those revolve around Legionella provision, and it's so we're in a fit situation. So when we do get the green light to open, it doesn't mean at that point then we've got to do all our checks because these have been ongoing all the time. So hopefully that's answered Councillor Lee's questions.
Okay, with that, Jono.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just wanted you to take credit for all the great work you're doing at the moment. I think people think you sat around doing nothing, so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lydia.
Thank you, Chairman. I just got a couple of questions. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, obviously you've been taking doctors' recommendations and that, but like I went and I signed on for the thing, but then I couldn't attend until I'd seen a chap called Michael, can't remember, I think that was his name, and that was in February. Then we had and I wasn't well, I had a chest infection, and then we had the lockdown, but you've still been taking my money and I haven't actually attended. And whilst I've emailed them, they just keep sending me letters with more money being asked for. And, you know, I think it's a bit naughty from somebody's point of view. I know we need the Active for Day, we need the money, we need people to join. But at the end of the day, when you haven't actually been there, I think, you know, to take the money. And also, I understand that if you decide to give notice, you then have to pay an extra month's money once you've given notice. Is that correct?
I can either answer these questions generically or I can speak to Councillor Hurst separately. I don't mind. I mean, generally, so the process is anyone who was, when the centres shut in March, we froze all membership. So no finance should have been taken out of anyone's accounts after the March collection. We then kept the freeze on until till we opened in July. Then we gave all members 3 months, right the way through to the end of August. And I think I referenced that in my report. And then we started collecting finance again in September. So that was the first direct debit. We then collected direct debits in September and we've collected them in October. So if any member wished to freeze, they could have froze. There was a charge for freezing, which there always is. And then when someone gives notice, they obviously, as part of the terms and condition, there is a period where we will still take another direct debit because that's part of their notice period. And then we will cease collecting the direct debits. So that's, I'm quite happy to discuss personal things after. What we have done is if anyone's got an issue, we ask them to contact Inquiries At, and that's the Inquiries At Active for Today email address. And obviously we've got staff on, most of our staff are on furlough, so we have limited resources to be able to answer those questions, but we do work through the questions and everyone will be answered. So whether we've got to let, but what I will do now is take Councillor Hurst's comments and I'll take them back myself and I will contact or get one of the staff who aren't on furlough to contact Councillor Hurst direct this week.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
My other question to it is, I understand that some people who log onto the website to book things have found that they've got, they can't log on, and then they've said they've got 2 memberships. And there's quite a few people who are having trouble, obviously before the lockdown, were having trouble to actually log on to actually book a slot for anything because they were saying you're not a registered member and things like that. So, and then finding they'd got two memberships and passwords weren't going in. So I think that might just be a glitch, but I think it's something that needs looking at.
Yeah, we did have that small problem at the beginning. That was all to do with different email addresses. We've put in a new system. I think Andy alluded to it earlier, and it's more of a self system now. It's called Leisure Hub. It works on a self-service basis, so it's all online. I notice I've got Alexander on the Teams call as well. So technically wise, obviously Alexander's a lot better placed to answer some technical questions because ICT have been heavily involved in the sort of joint work with XN Leisure, or our leisure provider. However, I will say that all those glitches were rectified. You will have teething problems, unfortunately, with any new system. And I believe now the system towards when we reopened in July was working quite successfully. We did have staff on hand as well to support people through where they may have had. And I will say some things do occasionally have operator issues as well. So we once we explain or get people in and support them through it, generally we've had really good take up from our online systems now, and we'll continue with that process going forward. So if Councillor Hurst has any individuals who have had or are having problems when we reopen again, if you can redirect them either to the reception of any of the leisure centres, and one member of staff will support them through trying to get them back online if they've got any issues.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thanks for that, Andy. And I think if someone contacts Lydia as well, that would be actually great. Okay, I've got Yvonne's hand up. I mean, Peter, your hand went up or went down. I don't know where you want to come in again, but I'll take Yvonne first.
Thank you. Yeah, in report, but one thing I want to pick up on is childhood obesity. Now, we've been talking about this for a number of years and in this committee, so I would have expected to have some data on this, not just a word to say we're developing and provide opportunities. We need some data to say that this is actually working, that childhood obesity is being lessened because of what we're doing in this coordinated sessions and everything else, but we're not getting that. All we're getting is we're developing. Well, something should have developed by now, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Andy, do you want to respond to that?
Well, this is probably a joint one for Andy and myself, because childhood obesity is a lot larger than just the offer that Active for Today are providing. So all Active for Today are providing is they're trying to meet some of the council's larger priorities and the county's larger priorities by providing some activities which support the childhood obesity issues. So we are developing programs. We have developed already a significant amount of programs. The new Dukery swimming pool will go a long way to support some of these areas. But as Andy said, the detail of the actual business plan is still being worked out. And we know that we'll be working with schools, working with hard to reach groups, giving free opportunities, giving things like bursaries to young people to give them free access at certain times for those who price may be a barrier to entry. So there will be a lot of initiatives that are taking place, but equally on the same light, the council are doing a lot of work with their health programme, and probably Andy's certainly in a better place to sort of give you some more information on that. So I don't know if you want to take that now, Andy, or not.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah, in terms of childhood obesity, Active will play their part in hopefully creating opportunities for young people to be physically active, whether that's swimming or through sport or whatever else. I think the indicators that we need to be sharing with members are linked to the National Children's Weight Management Measurement Programme, which is a national programme that measures levels of childhood obesity, if you like, usually at year 1 entry into a primary school, and then at year 6 exit, and those numbers are then analysed and national figures are produced, and that is just still down to a local level. So that is picked up primarily by the district through my colleague Helen, who is the health promotion officer, and it's part of the physical activity and sport plan, which is on the forward plan to be reported to Leisure, I think in January, where we will try and provide members with an update of the impacts of all sorts of different interventions across all different platforms, because it's not singly a challenge to Active for Today and or the district council in that respect. It has to be a coordinated response across many different levels, and the schools have a significant role to play with that. But equally, so does the household, and so does the family, in terms of trying to make the right choices. And that's a combination of not just what you eat, but how much you eat, the types of thing you eat, but then also reference back to levels of physical activity. And the ambition of Active is to create more people more active more often. And if we get that, and we get that around young people as well, then that's likely to make a positive impact on reducing childhood obesity levels. Councillor Woodhead. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay for you, On?
Surely, with all of this going on, there should be data, and we haven't got any. Why not?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Chairman. What was that? We don't have the data.
Can you repeat that? We said, Yvonne.
Yeah.
I still can hear you as well.
Right. Okay. Can you hear me now? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. Sorry, Councillor Woodhead. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
These different agencies all working together and everybody on board. Why have we got no figures? Why is there no data to say this is how well we're doing?
Well, there is data, but it's usually at a national level, and it is still down to East Midlands levels compared with all England, etc. And again, we can bring some of that data back to Leisure and Environment for further consideration. I think we've got a report coming in January that's hopefully going to give an update in terms of the priorities that are identified in our physical activity and sport plan. But we are reliant on that data collection methodology, and that being able to be gathered, crunched and distilled into meaningful messages so that we can look at our direction of travel. So yeah, we will pull out the stops to try and get some local data that's meaningful for members to consider in terms of Newark and Sherwood and how we compare with our wider partners in Nottinghamshire and the East Midlands, and then at a national level.
I will just add to that also, Chairman, if you don't mind, that we, as Active for Today, we provide data on children coming into the building, how many members we've got, what their usage is like. So all that is about young people getting active and how often they're getting active. And we do have more data if you wish to drill that down. So we have data on swimming lessons, on what levels, pathways people do. But again, the information that's provided to a Leisure and Environment Committee was based on the performance data that was discussed and was requested by the committee. But there is more data available if we want to drill any further down on a specific point.
Thanks, Andy. I mean, it's probably something we can put on the forward plan for the future. You know, as an agenda item. You know, it is quite an important topic. Whether Neil wants to bring under health and well-being in the future, but it's something we could discuss a bit later. Bruce Lawton. Bruce, did you get your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've got on with my ThinkPad. Just a quick one, for both Andys really. It's the Ollerton swimming pool. I'm one of the critics of this going ahead, but I just really wanted to make sure that the pair of you have got an active plan in place to try to get the usage up on this particular swimming pool. Previously, it was very was thinly used by residents of Ollerton, and I'm just wondering whether you've got what ideas you've got to try and improve the take-up of this facility so it doesn't become like many of the other centres that we used to have, like for example in Bilthorpe, became lead weights around our necks and affecting the service delivery of other centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I think it will be well used. I think there was quite an uptake when we tried to provide another pool out after we lost the Dewgrees pool to outsource it to different areas. And I think with the local building plan going on in Ollerton and the surrounding area, I think there'll be more people wanting to use the leisure centre. But I don't know if Andy wants to come back on that.
Yeah, obviously COVID's changed the whole of the landscape currently. But prior to going into this, we were quite confident, as the chairman said, when we exited Ollerton because the school closed the swimming pool and moved over to South Forest, we actually had the highest membership of any junior activities we've had since we've been operating at Ollerton. So we were confident that we could bring that back and we could increase it again. It will obviously have a new facility, so that in its own right will be an exceptionally good advertisement. And then we've got an active programme working with the schools, working with the outreach groups, again working with families in the communities. And I think, as the chairman said, we've got a large development taking place there, and we've got large housing growth already, which again will only add to the critical mass of users that we will gain. So clearly COVID's affected everyone's life at the minute, but we're still confident with that new facility being based there, we can generate the need that we've already got there, and we can turn those into memberships and active usage. And that will be from a whole plethora of play usage, community-based activity swim, and memberships as well. So I do think we've got a whole gambit that we've got to go at, and obviously I'm quite looking forward to that pool being developed so we can get on with the plans. The plans will actually be rolled out and start probably about 3 months before. So we will start actively promoting it and do some pre-sales. Obviously, current climate allowing us to do it, but that will start round about March time, ready for a June sort of opening.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Andy. I'm sure it will complement the existing leisure facilities there, and it would increase the membership as well, hopefully, going forward. As you say, let's get COVID out of the way. Yeah. Peter Harris. Peter, do you want to have a question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. I did put my hand down because it's very similar to Yvonne's question. However, I wanted to follow that up, if I may. I recognise Andy saying that there'll be a report to the next meeting in January, which will be very helpful. However, I'm concerned really what you're talking about is input data and not output. In other words, how successful this is. Frankly, relying on national figures is not good enough, even if they're distilled down to regional level. There is quite good information at ward level, which could be utilised in terms of this, both from a decade ago, from 5 years and 1 year. And I'm really hoping that we actually get some real information in terms of outputs, and not what you are doing in terms of how successful you are in attracting children into the centres, but what effect that's actually happening, because it's the efficacy of the procedures, not necessarily we can't be accountable for all of the issues. However, we could be accountable for some of them. And frankly, I don't think that just measuring what number of children coming through the centre is what we're looking at. We're actually needing to see what's actually happening to those children on an annual basis. And I'm hoping that the report in January will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more work we can do on this to get sort of see what we're doing. It is very important that some work we do and help these people. And does anybody want to make any more comments on that? No. We've got the recommendations at point 8 on page 21, A, B, and C. I move those. Find a seconder.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Lydia. Instead of asking, I'll ask all those in favour. If anybody's against, please show. If not, I take that as unanimous, because it's difficult to do a vote on here. So thank you very much for that. And we'll move on to item 7, which is the fly tipping action plan. Is this Mr. Kirk or Mr.
Alan Batty, Chairman.
Oh, it's Alan Batty. Okay, sorry, Alan.
That's okay. So this is a report to update members on the work that we've been doing in relation to fly tipping. And you may recall, Chairman, that we brought a report almost a year ago now, updating or setting out an action plan of how we intended to address fly tipping across the district with the Nottingham, Newark and Sherwood campaign, with a multi-agency in-house group to look at what actions we could take. It was going well. We set off quite at a pace and put some good stuff in place. But as you've already heard, Chairman, the impact of COVID has a profound effect on the progress we're able to make. And I have set out later in the report where we are with the actions and some commentary on those to set members clear on exactly where we are with the action plan. I've also been able to set out in the report a comparison of fly tipping numbers and weights for a period last year compared with the same period this year, and that's in table 2.10, Chairman. And I think you'll see quite clear that both the numbers of fly tips that we received this year compared to the same period last year and the weight of those fly tips has increased. And some of the reasons for that, we had the suspension of our household waste recycling rounds for a while, which meant that some people took to fly tipping some of their waste. We also had the household waste recycling centres closed for a period of time. And again, some people took to fly tipping that waste. That doesn't explain the full story, because fly tipping has continued to be high once those services were back in action. So there's clearly something else going on as well. And certainly of late, we've seen some quite large fly tips that are being investigated as organised crime. Yeah, there's that element to feed in as well, Chairman. 211 just sets out some of the enforcement action. Again, it's been limited by COVID, but it's certainly a big improvement on where we were last year. We've issued 11 fixed penalty notices for fly tipping, and they're £400 fine, Chairman. So yeah, that's really positive, and both officers at the depot and our own community protection officers have been responsible for issuing those. As I've said, I've set out in the table the progress we've made on some of those actions in 3.1 and some comments to give members an idea of what our proposals are going forward. And I'll take any questions if there are any, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I mean, this is something we did propose to do a lot of work on this last year, but COVID gone away. I mean, fly tipping has been a blight for our district throughout the years, and it's something we really do. And the Not in Newark campaign was going to hopefully get more people involved in trying to on an anti-fly tipping campaign. But hopefully we can kickstart this next year. Jono, you got your hand up first.
Yes, Chairman, 2 questions. The first question is, we've asked many times and we haven't received it yet. How many prosecutions have we had in the past 2 years on fly tipping? And the second question is, councillors used to get an update on how many fly tips had happened in their area and when they happened. We've stopped receiving them, but obviously fly tips are still happening. If we could have an update on that, it'd be much appreciated.
Yep, Chairman, we can either do that through you to the whole committee or directly to Councillor Lee.
I think we're interested. The whole committee could know those figures. Actually, Alan, please. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, is that okay, Jono? Peter.
Chairman, really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not just the committee. Every member, I would think, of the council would be interested to see what was happening in their ward and what consequences were affected. So if that could be processed, that would be helpful. I have a question for Alan, which is to do with the licensing of trade operatives. There have been some people in Southwell going around offering collection, but the difficulty has been identifying who is licensed and who isn't. Are there national standards for the publication of licensing which can be put into vehicles, or if not, can we generate some material for putting into the vans windscreens so it's immediately identifiable that they are licensed? There was one trader who eventually produced his license. I was a bit skeptical, but he did. But it was a tiny little scrappy piece of paper in his windscreen. If we had something which was immediately identifiable as a licensed trader compared to the unlicensed ones, I think that would be a real step forward. Is that possible?
So if you're talking about people who are licensed to take waste rather than scrap, that's not a license that this authority issues. I've got Andy Kirk on the call, on the line, Chairman, so Andy will know a bit more about those details than I would, but my understanding is that those licenses are issued by the Environment Agency, so it would be something we'd have to discuss with them in terms of what they give out in terms of a license and for that to be displayed, but it's not something we offer, Chairman.
Okay, so it's nothing we really monitor then, Alan. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say it's nothing. If we are made aware of a collection being made, we have the ability to go to the agency and check whether they're licensed or not, and then pass that information to the Environment Agency in that instance. But we are not the responsible authority for issuing licenses. I think Andy wants to say something, Chairman.
Right, Andy Kirk.
Yeah, Chairman, through you. I mean, Alan's quite right. The waste carriers licenses, which these companies must hold, are given out by the Environment Agency. There is no requirement, as I'm aware at the moment, to display those in vehicles, although Environment Agency, when they give permission for waste transfer stations, they have to be on the outside of the building so everybody can see that they are licensed. But we have developed quite close links with the Environment Agency over the past couple of weeks dealing with the organised crime fly tips. So I will mention that to colleagues at the EA to see whether there's anything that can be done to make it easier. And I agree with Councillor Harris, it would be far better if people were looking out at vehicles that were identified as licensed operatives. It would be far easier for people to follow the regulations.
Yeah, but very much so. I mean, and unfortunately, it's the unscrupulous ones that lead to the fly tipping that we get, because they pick the stuff up for price and then they're taken in a hedge bottom somewhere or a gateway with a real problem. But I mean, I must remind people as well. I mean, there's a council. We do a very good service of picking large items up and disposal of them, and we've tried, I know, prior to COVID, of doing regional pickups in areas, street pickups where people could get together and bring the rubbish out, and we'd take large loads away. So that is something, again, I think we need to advertise that's available through the council services. Scott, you'd like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two questions in relation to the amending of the access to recycling centres for trades vehicles and the discussions that have taken place over the Newark Recycling Centre. This is something that I really welcome, and I was just wondering if the committee could be updated on progress. And then secondly, if this were to be agreed and proven to be working well, could this be used as a model for the Sherwood side of the district in respect of, say, the recycling centre at Bilsthorpe?
Okay, are you going to take that one, Andy, or Alan?
I'll take that one, Chairman. Yeah, there were some discussions pre-COVID with the County Council and Veolia, because as you're aware, the HWRC sites are County Council owned and Veolia operated. And they were going to set up a system where traders could actually register. I think the issue with it at the moment is the cost, because traditionally traders were charged to, a tonne was a minimum charge. So they were trying to come up with a calculation to make that more affordable. Unfortunately, that was right before lockdown, and both the county and Veolia, as far as the HWRCs are concerned, have had other things on their plates. But it is something that we are hoping to press forward on once we get a bit of a relaxation with the current system we're operating in.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Scott's right. I think the independent trader, sort of either plumber, builder, roofer, etc., creates a certain amount of waste, but probably not enough to warrant having a skip on the job. And they're the guys who probably have nowhere to go with their waste. And I think it's somewhere a need for us to accommodate that. And I mean, it's something I've been advocating in the county, that we need to be allowing these guys in under license and probably at a cost to dispose of their waste in a sensible, controlled way. I think it's a little bit of a grey area there. Okay, I think Bruce, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a licence now for traders, don't we? The HWRCs, but Andy, sorry, Alan, I was just going to get on to you actually. I think you're being tight-fisted, because you're charging my residents for if they want to have their bed picked up, you charge them for the mattress and the bed base at the same time, so you charge them twice. I think you're being a bit overzealous in your charging procedures. And the reason why I brought it up more than anything else is whenever you do see fly tipping, you do see a predominance of mattresses being thrown out. And I'm just wondering whether that might be one of the reasons why you're doing it. So it's not a plea to change it, but I'm just saying I do think it's a bit raw, to say the least, to charge them double for a bed.
Yeah, just a response to that, Chairman. Yeah, I take on board Councillor Lawton's comments. We are the cheapest council in Nottinghamshire for bulky waste, excess waste, and we do have to draw a line somewhere. Do we call a 3-piece suite one item, or do we call it 3? So it's semantics, but I'll take on board Councillor Lawton's comments.
Thanks, Andy. And it's a good service we provide, and I think it's something we don't probably advertise enough that people realise what we do. Neil, I think you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was looking at the figures for fly tipping and section 2.1 this year against last year, and although we can't tell what the figures were before lockdown because they only start really from April, they significantly increased from last year, and we know that there was increased fly tipping because the recycling centres were closed, for instance, during the first lockdown. But given those figures and given the relaunch, I just wondered when the service was relaunched, because I recall discussions about price changes, and I just wanted to see whether we've yet got a feel for how has the relaunch worked, and is there a likelihood of the instances of these fly tipping coming down?
Chairman, does Councillor Myton refer to the relaunch of the bulky waste collection service, which was suspended for a while? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So whether that's a direct impact on the amount of fly tipping that's been happening.
Yeah. I think Andy Kirk's probably best placed to answer that for me.
Yes.
Did you get that, Andy?
Yes, yeah, I did. I haven't got the date to hand actually, but we didn't miss months. Double check that and try and get it back to members. But I think that the crux of the question is fly tipping coming back down, and I think the answer is no. I think there's been the unfortunate situation with COVID has meant we haven't been able to get stuck into the Nottingham Newark Insured campaign as much as we would like. The CCTV cameras that have been trialled firstly on the lay-by on the A616 have actually proved valuable, and we've got a number of cases going through now that obviously they're ongoing cases, and one of them in particular is to do with the organised crime group that we're talking to the EA about. So I think we will start to see improvements, and certainly when we get into the meat of the Nottingham Newark Insured campaign, I think things will improve drastically. But unfortunately, when you have sort of 2 or 3 20 to 30 ton fly tips all at once, it does tend to skew the figures. So it's quite disheartening. As you can imagine, it's just as bad for the guys that are picking it up as it is for the residents that see it. But hopefully, when we can get out of the end of this and get back to some good partnership working with the county, Veolia, the EA, then I think we should see some big improvements.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I know we've been blighted just recently with some like industrial tipping, which is an absolute nightmare for you guys to sort out and pick up along with the Environment Agency. And I think this paper is about going forward. We were hoping to do a lot of work on this last year, but unfortunately this last year has been lost. So hopefully we're going to kickstart this next year and have a real binge on fly tipping, awareness with the general public. Hopefully the general public can be our eyes and ears as well. Once we start catching people and then we can inflict some fines, and people realise we're serious, and then I think we can control it a bit. But it doesn't help again with the lockdown and this, that, and the other, and then the accessibility to the waste cycle and tips for people. Neil and Scott, you both got. Sorry.
Yeah, just one thing to mention, Chairman, as well, of course, is one of the big parts of the Nottingham Newark Insured is going to be the action days. So members
yes, that's right. Yes,
and that is they are designed to take a lot of the waste that can sort of historically be fly tipped. And of course, we've not done any of those during lockdown because they rely heavily on volunteers and partnership working. So once we can get back to doing those under the CSG banner, then that will help the situation as well.
Yeah, and I do know some local parishes and communities did do some litter picks during the summer, during lockdown, and I know that as a council we've got these litter pick sticks, and we will provide bags and pick all the rubbish up as well. So again, it's community involvement as well with getting involved in making the district, a cleaner and a better place for us all to live. But as I say, fly tipping is a real scourge, and it is something that needs tackling, but it's not an easy one to do. John, you had your hand up, put it down again. Did you want
Chairman,
to say anything?
I've got a question if you'll allow me. It was just that the action days were mentioned. I was always a little bit annoyed to a certain extent with my area, Lydia's area, Balderton, being one of the largest bits. We never got an action day. We never got one, and other smaller areas did get them. And I would like to fight for Balderton to be prime and place for the next time these next action days start. We are kind of the forgotten area. We're kind of associated with Newark, but we're not with Balderton. And we do have lots of fly tipping. We've got lots of rural areas, and I would like to put Balderton prime and place for the next time these happen, if possible, Chairman.
No, that's fine, John. I actually think that Balderton would have probably been on the list by now, but because we missed all the ones in the summer, we have to go back to them. So, but yeah, we will make sure that Balderton is on the list for that. And I think all areas, and I think we need to go back again to ones we've already visited, a couple of years later or so, because I think the residents got an awful lot out of it, and it's just keeping that momentum going and that interest there, especially with the young people. Yeah. Okay. We've got the recommendations at point 8 on page 41, A and B.
Has Roger frozen?
I think he has. I think we've lost him.
Councillor Mason, while Roger dials back in, are you able to step into the chairman's role?
Yes. So if we can take I'll propose the recommendations as mentioned by Roger. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, Chairman, I'll do it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 11. Sorry, agenda.
Okay, thanks. Now I froze. Sorry.
Yeah. So we took the vote on the on
yeah.
item.
Thanks very much for that, Neil. Yeah, that lovely. Sorry about that. Yeah, Wi-Fi in the sticks, and I've actually just had cable to the property, so I don't quite know what's happening there. We were going to move on now to agenda item 12.
Yeah.
Is that what you said, Neil?
Just but I just read down it's 12. Sorry, apologies. So I'll hand back over.
Because this is now not on as an exempt item. It's for public knowledge, and I don't know who's taking this one. Is that you, Andy?
Yes, Chairman, it is. So, yeah, thank you. So this report basically is to present to members a business case for bringing the grounds maintenance of the HRA or housing service land back in-house to Newark and Sherwood newly formed street service, and rather than contracting out to a third party. It's also to obtain an in-principle decision to expand the existing street scene service to include that maintenance, and noting the potential obligations under 2P of bringing that service back in-house, and to prevent members with details of enhanced levels of service available, which will form part of future consultation. Now, it's quite a long report, so I don't intend to read it word for word, but just to give you a feel that obviously in 2.1 there's the background of the current maintenance of the HRA land, which is broken into a number of aspects of programmed grounds maintenance under an SLA, so grass cutting, shrub and hedge maintenance, etc. a fixed budget, a programme for tree works and arboriculture maintenance. Sorry, got my tongue around that one. And a fixed budget that caters for responsive clearing of fly tips, etc., including regular playground inspections and maintenance of playgrounds on HRA land. So you see at the bottom of that the current costs and how they are broken down with the SLA, which everybody will be aware is with a company called ID Verdi. And that looks also at the estimated budget, because that contract comes to a close at the end of this financial year. So there are the estimated increases that take us forward into future years. Obviously the contract for the programme works is 79% of the budget, and that's being held with ID Verdi. There are some additions like the fly tipping, and now more recently the tree works that are dealt with through the street scene service. So there's been a review of the current service, and in September 2020 there was a tenant survey containing 10 questions sent out to tenants that was done by housing colleagues, and the feedback there in 2.3 is as follows, which basically breaks down to fairly satisfied, people sort of quite happy with some of the grass cutting, they find it generally acceptable, but and the quality and swiftness of fly tipping removal was also seen as good. We noted there, of course, that the street scene service are already doing that. But basically there was a room for improvement in the maintenance of hard standing areas, cleaning and regularity of weeding, etc. So there were room for improvements, and tenants and members alike wish to see improvements in the service. And obviously, due to the timeline for procurement of the new contract, there are basically two options now available. Option one is to extend the current contract with ID Verdi, because there is a 2-year extension option. And option two is to bring it back, the current contract to an end, and deliver the service in-house using the street scene service already up and running. So there are a number of options available, so 3 options, and pretty much it is down to option A, B and C. And option A is really no big change to the current specification, and that doesn't mean service delivery, but that means what the specification of the SLA is. No current change. And the members will see there that on in 3.7, it will highlight what those options are based around with regards to grass cutting, shrubs, planting, fly tipping, etc., etc. It also gives on 3.8 a cost for what option A would mean with street scene delivery service. You then got option B, again, that gives you the criteria for that, which is increased shrub work and raised planters, additional fly tipping and litter collections, additional weed control, and some additional hard standing bark, chumstick areas, etc., and removal of excess growth. Again, in 3.8, there are costs associated with that, and likewise, option C is an increase yet again with an increased price. And there are recommendations there to look at bringing them in a sort of tailored way, so that option 1 comes in, and then housing colleagues go out and look at what tenants and residents have got to say about the service, and whether they would wish to see increases in visits, etc., and any bring on board obviously the additional cost that would bring in. So obviously members are being asked to approve in principle the expansion of that street scene team to accommodate this work, that they would know the potential TUPE implications, because there will be possible TUPE implications from the current supplier, and that members request the decision from this committee to refer to Homes and Communities Committee for consideration, and also that the proposal fall within its remit before being sent to Policy and Finance for full approval. And there are a lot of the nitty gritty within those comments. So if any members want to ask anything, I am here with Ben Stacey, who is our street scene manager, who would be quite glad to answer any of the sort of nitty gritty stuff that if anybody he wants to delve into that.
Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, I mean, this is an initiative I fully support. We know the quality of the work that our ground maintenance team does because we get all the green flags around our parks. So we know their workmanship is well up to scratch and of a very high standard. And I think this is a great initiative to take on the HRA work. And I think we can even expand it even more because I think there's plenty of parish councils out there who are looking for quality workmanship on their greens and sports fields. And I think that is something that we can expand as a council and move into the future.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy. Yep.
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, we are already looking at those possibilities and exploring those works with parish councils. But I think it's key that, you know, through the Cleaner, Safer, Greener Action Plan that we have more accountability for the services delivered within our own land and HRA land, and also bring a consistency of service, which is basically tenants and more often than not, members can't understand why there are two levels of service within what is basically our own land, and we would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just tidies everything up and makes it more consistent. Yeah, Peter, you were the first with your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome taking back in-house as a proposal. I'd support that. I think you've identified the benefits of that. I can't see many disbenefits, and didn't agree that this should be outsourced originally. Anyway, there are 2 points I'd like to raise. Firstly, I'm hoping that Street Scene will be much more aware of some of the issues. I've been very disappointed by ID Verdi's removal of 70 metres of hedgerow, which they shouldn't have done, and it's going to be very difficult to re-establish a 100-year-old hedge in Southwell. I think that was fairly disgraceful. Mentioned it to Suzanne Shedd, but I'm afraid it'll have to be something that will be reinstated over time, and I just think that was a really poor management decision by ID Verdi. And I'm just hoping that our staff can support do that. Two things in terms of the suggested contract. I think that residents, if they're in or tenants and also residents, because many of the estates are not just tenants, they're residents as well, could be contacted and engaged with in terms of the very short 60 mil grass cutting. I think there's an increased enthusiasm for meadowland, which takes a lot less work, but does take some work in terms of the removal of arisings from an early cut and a late cut after the wilt period. I think that some of our land could be established as, I think it's colloquially known as rewilded. There's a large number of places in the district and some in my own ward which could be turned into meadowland, and some other districts have done a really successful job at that. And I'm hoping that can be incorporated within the contract. But also I'm quite concerned about the increase of glyphosate weeding. I don't think that's necessary, surely. If we're talking about encouraging wildflowers, then I don't think we should be glyphosating 2 or 3 times more than is currently done. And I think we should engage with our residents and tenants in terms of what they would like to see in terms of re-establishing nature and a natural period landscape, rather than cutting everything to 60 mil. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Peter. Some very good points there. And we just have to be a little bit careful of noxious weeds, but it is something that the Notts County Council are doing actually with their roadside cuts. They're not probably going as wide with them, and are probably doing less of them to enhance nature, basically, which you're right, which makes them small invertebrates, gives them a little bit more of a natural habitat instead of, as you say, a very short lawn.
Just a quick Chairman, on the 2 comments that Councillor Harris made. Yeah, we would absolutely agree with his comments about the length and the rewilding. One of the added benefits, of course, is within the street scene team, we have the development team that are already looking through the Cleaner, Safer, Greener Action Plan to carry out those types of works all over the district. And with regards to glyphosates, we've already, since we took control of grounds maintenance areas, we've reduced the reliance on glyphosates by over 50%. We're not using them in closed churchyards at all now. So we are heading towards that. There always is going to be a requirement for some, but yeah, we're already well on the way with that. And we're quite proud of our reduction already.
Thanks, Andy. Jono.
Chairman, thank you very much. Well, this is something very, very close to my heart. It's something that me and David Payne spoke about a long time ago, and it's something that I'm actually I would love to talk about. So I'll take a few minutes if that's okay. I think we need to do one of two things. Obviously, I support this proposal 100%. I'm personally in favour of doing as much as we can. If it costs a little bit more money, I'm happy with that. Thorpe's Close, I had a meeting about 6 months ago on Thorpe's Close in Coddington. At the moment, it's a five-a-side football pitch that is very, very, it's not maintained well. We had a meeting with the officers, and the residents and myself want to change that into a woodland walk area with some low-level paths and woodlands. So hopefully the officers will be able to look into that for me. It's areas that are underutilised that can be used for wildlife and have more access. And you might find that things like that are used more by the residents, because at the moment it's just an area where some dogs poo and it's not really used by anybody else. Also, what I think we need to be looking at is Coddington in particular. It has so much land that is owned by the council that is never going to be able to be used for anything. It's small meter parts in between houses, or there's some small level bits. And when you add up the maintenance costs, it costs the council and the taxpayer a fortune. Now, I know that some residents would be happy taking over that maintenance or signing over for maybe £1. I know there's land at Stirling Drive that the parish council are really keen on having a look at and wanting to take over the maintenance and running of it. We've had a look for houses on some of the land. It's not suitable. And maybe the best way would be the council to have realistic conversations with the parish council, local residents and the councillors, of seeing what land can be transferred, because in the long run it will save the taxpayers a fortune, as well as allowing us to spend what money we have in being able to make areas look nice, like Clay Lane. I know the residents are wanting to do more in that area, and it just makes sense, Chairman. But I know you're working hard on this, but if the officers could get back to me privately on a few of those issues, it would be appreciated.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think it's something we've been asking for a while, is a register of all our assets and land assets within the district, because I believe you're right, there are some there that probably are worthless to us and probably have more benefit to the local community. That's an ongoing discussion that we need to be having. Andy, did you want to come on that?
Yeah, just to follow up from Councillor Leader, yeah, absolutely agree. We are already well on with an asset survey from the entire district, and of course, just touching on some of the areas of land. I mean, there's obviously a difference between the council land and the HRA land, and this particular report talking about the SLA with housing colleagues. Obviously, it's their specification, their contract. If there's any of the HRA land that we're talking about, I can see Suzanne's on the call. I'm sure she'd have a comment to make about that. As far as land that's not under the HRA, then yeah, officers who I think met you out there on Thorpe Oaks, we can definitely follow that up with you.
Thanks for that, Andy.
So, Chairman,
Suzanne, did you want to make? Jono?
Sorry, I do apologise. So there's two pieces of land that have roughly the same name. There's Thorpe Oaks, that is owned by the district council, but then there's Thorpe's Close that is owned by HRH. So there is two separate land. I didn't want any confusion there.
Yeah, no, yeah, quite okay with both of them, John.
Hello, Chairman. It's Suzanne speaking.
Yeah.
Just to say, I'll pick up separately with Councillor Lee. It'd be good to have a bit of conversation about that. As Andy says, you know, we've got HRA land, we've got general fund land. We do need to look at it. It will all hopefully come around as we go through this process. I suppose what I would like to focus the committee's attention on is that this in principle decision, so we can start moving these things forward and hopefully find something that works for tenants and residents and provides a cost efficient service, but also enables to have real pride across the whole of our street scene. But I will contact Councillor Lee separately, Chairman.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks for that input. Yeah, Lydia.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I'm in full agreement with this. I think we should bring it back in-house. And even if at the end of the day it does cost a little bit more, first of all, we are going to be bringing employment back in as well. So I think it's a good idea. I fully agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a comment, really. I fully support these proposals and recommendations, but it's also just to place on record that one parish council already in my ward, Kings Clipston, are already utilising Newark and Sherwood District Council services in respect of their playing field down at Squires Lane. The work that's being done has been really, really good, and it's an exciting project, and I would just like to thank officers.
Good. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Anybody else, any other comments? We have the recommendations at 9.0, A, B and C. Are all members in favour of that? I'll just take anyone who's against. I would take that as a unanimous decision then. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I think that's a very good initiative for the council to do going forward. Moving on to item 8, Leisure and Environment Review and Capital Forecast Outturn Report. I believe that's Nick.
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. So as we brought to the last committee back in September, this is a forecast outturn report of where we believe we're going to be as at the end of this year, so the 31st of March 21. As you can hopefully appreciate, this is a moving feast, and work that was done to collate this information was actually done during October, prior to the announcements of the Tier 3 restrictions and then also the national restrictions. So the numbers unfortunately are slightly outdated because again what we're asking budget managers and budget holders to do is forecast forward where they believe they're going to be at the end of the financial year as against their original budget that was set for them. So as you can see in the appendix on page 44, the Leisure and Environment Committee overall is looking at a £146,000 unfavourable variance. Now, one thing that I must just add is, as I said, this is a moving feast because of the various different things due to COVID. We've found today that we need to add another 56,000 unfavourable variance, unfortunately, to the livestock market. The number there doesn't include any allowance for the business rates that we'll have to incur in terms of the livestock market, and having brought that obviously back in because we don't have an operator at the moment. We are being able to reduce that to 9 months because we've occupied the building for 3 months in terms of storing some equipment there in terms of the regulations, but unfortunately there will be some business rates that are chargeable. So that brings the overall variance up to 202,000, which will be reported to Policy and Finance. So there will be a difference, like I say, based on this report and the report that's going to Policy and Finance next week. Like I say, that will say 202,000 with 376 as the variance against the Newark livestock market. The other areas in the committee, as you can see, are increased income, some vacant posts, and again just reduced staffing spend. So that brings that overall variance, as I say, to around 202,000. Now, in terms of contextually across the whole council, we're able to claim some of the income losses that we've incurred across the year. We're able to claim that from HM government, so from central government, and what that looks like in terms of how we can claim is we're claiming in quarters effectively, and we're only allowed to claim for that those income losses that where a decision hasn't been taken. So, for instance, I know that not necessarily in this committee, but in terms of car parking, for the Economic Development Committee, we took a decision around 2 hours free. So we're not actually able to claim the loss of income that we've seen due to that. Similarly with commercial income, and unfortunately the cattle market would be a good example of that. Commercial income isn't something, again, that we can claim against. But we're hoping to be able to claim certain parts of the income losses. And when we do that, we're looking at a range between £500,000 and around £750,000. The report says at 2.2, 537,000 to 737,000, depending on how much will be eligible that we can claim. And again, that all depends on how long we're in lockdown for again this time, and what impact that has on the amount of income that we're able to generate. So that's contextually where we are in respect of the whole council position. Now, clearly, we're still working with budget managers to review what their expected expenditure is and what their forecast income is, and we're hopeful to bring that down to a break-even position over the whole year. Even if we do get to a position where we are in around that as an out-term position, I brought an update to the MTFP to I think it's October's council, which suggested that there may be a £600,000 call on reserves at the end of this financial year, and that was still affordable within the overall MTFP period. So should we get to a position where the overall council position is around £500,000 unfavourable variance, that is sustainable within the reserves position. Again, that doesn't include any allowance for any income that we are able to generate from the business rates pool, for which the Section 151 officers across the county are reviewing, and clearly that's going to have a big impact depending on how businesses can cope through this period and whether they can get out the other side of COVID. The rest of the appendices go through the costs or the budgets that we've got set up and the anticipated spend against the COVID spend. So effectively, the actual costs that we're incurring and what we're incurring them on in relation to just COVID. So rather than incurring them back in the service budgets, we've tried to analyse them separately in one place so we can just review where we are with that particular spend. And then there are various appendices in terms of where we are with the different projects for the capital programme across all committees. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of where we are, but like I say, it is a moving feast. This information was put together in October, and again, we constantly review where we are, but just the timing of having to write the report in terms of getting it onto the agenda meant that it's back from October. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Nick. I know it's very difficult at this moment in time, juggling the figures and balancing the books. I mean, really knowing what the future holds, etc., etc. But I mean, things look pretty okay. So well done to you for keeping them as they are. But no one knows how we are going forward. But I know a lot more councils, a lot more position than what we are. So well done for keeping them where they are. I've got Yvonne and Peter. Yvonne.
On page 5, Appendix B, third of the way down, letter to residents within the district that was. Well, I'm still. My GP has not said I can go out yet. He's asked me not to, and I've never the letter. So, to council tenants, or where did it go? Because, as I say, I've not received one, and I don't know anybody in my area that has.
If I can come back.
Did you get that, Nick?
Yeah, just about. It was in relation to the letter to shielders within the district, wasn't it? And effectively, who did that go to? So I don't have the details, unfortunately, to hand. That was something that we did right back at the very start. So it was April when we got the data around who it was based on the information. I think it was. There were like 1.2 million shielders across the country, and it was that data. So the information had flowed down. I think it was from county, and the HART team, led by Andy. If Andy Hardy, I know he's dropped off the call now. He'd have probably been able to give the detail around it. But I can certainly ask for him to give me that information, and we'll supply you that on email if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Vaughn. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last nearly 30 years, I can barely remember a time when this committee or predecessor committees actually heard a positive response about the new livestock market. Now, clearly, that is now empty, but it really concerns me that we still have issues relating to the financial performance of the old tenant in the last financial year. What are they and what are we doing to recover them? And the last sentence there, ought to be recovered relating to previous years. Frankly, this has been a sore for a number of councillors, including me, for many, many decades. Barely have we ever received a proper return from the market, from the previous tenants, and I do hope, frankly, that we get this sorted out before they disappear completely. I'm really concerned. I'm very unhappy. Time after time after time after time has this committee and its predecessors' committees been fed information about the previous tenant, who frankly took this council to court and led us down a garden path that we should never have been in.
Thank you. Can you answer that, Nick? I know we did talk about it earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I can come back slightly on this. So in terms of that forecast variance, the vast majority of it was mainly because at the time when we wrote or when we built the budget back in January and February time, we were still under the impression that the tenants may well continue on during this financial year, and hence 200,000 of that variance actually relates to the fact that we'd put an income budget in for this year that unfortunately, as we've got no tenant, we won't be receiving. There are then some adjustments based on the fact that we'd raised an invoice at the point in time when they decided that they wouldn't continue on their operation of the building. We'd raised an invoice based on the turnover rent, or an average of the turnover rent from the previous years, and we accounted for that during last financial year. When we then received the information regarding the actual outturn and turnover position for last financial year, that was slightly lower than the estimated and the comparison from the previous 3 years. Hence, we've then had to produce a credit note during this financial year, and we've had to suffer the difference effectively this year. Clearly, then we've had to step in with the business rates, which has then increased the position further. In terms of the previous debt, there was a report that went to Policy and Finance, I believe it was, last time regarding the position with that debt. Hopefully that gives an answer.
The outstanding debt, it is now a legal case, I believe. So we're obviously what we are owed. I mean, the deficit this year was more a budget figure than actual, because there was no tenants, but we budgeted in for rent coming in, but we didn't know we weren't going to have a tenant. Does that answer your queries? Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions for Nick on that?
If not, is the paper is just for noting, so just noted.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody happy? Thank you. Thank you. And is it you, Nick, again with Mansfield District Crematorium?
Yeah, me again. Thank you, Chair. This is the accounts for Mansfield Joint Crematorium, for which we have a small percentage stake in terms of the overall cremations and the overall assets and liabilities of the committee. So if I can bring members to page 65. The table there shows by type of cost a budget and outturn and a variance analysis. This shows that the gross income was down against budget by around 163,000, but in the same token, gross expenditure was also down by about £93,000. Together with the interest received and pension and the reversal of the capital items, a surplus of 842,787,000 was able to be distributed. The following pages then describe some of the variances of the 163,000 and 93,000 in a little bit more detail. If I can bring you to page 69, the table at 3 outlines the distribution of that declared £842,000 surplus, showing that we received £61,355 and we received that during this year. So that's 7.28% of the declared surplus, which again just shows our small percentage stake within the operation. So this is in proportion to the number of cremations within the area, and then there's been an accounting adjustment for the out of area ones that have then been spread across the other districts proportionately. The rest of the report really details the core financial statements, so there's not really a lot more to say on there, so happy to take any questions if I can.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's always been a successful joint operation, although we are only a very minority shareholder of it. It always amazes me how they can produce a report of over 100 papers every time for a presentation from them. But and then we managed to struggle through. Anybody any questions for Nick on Mansfield Crematorium? Again, it's just for noting. We're happy that we noted.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thanks.
Okay. Urgency items. Item 10. It was the enforcement of coronavirus. That's basically just for noting. Are we happy with that? Yep. Can't see anybody objecting. I assume I'm still online. I haven't been switched off, or you've lost connection. No, okay. Okay. Right. Okay. If we're all happy with the urgency item, we've dealt with yes, the enforcement of the leisure centre. We dealt with item 12, grounds maintenance. So we have no exec items. We're moving on to the works programme. Has anybody anything that would like to add to the works programme? Peter Harris. Peter?
Previous item, Chairman. I think we had said that when members were consulted, their agreement would be noted on disagreements, and they haven't been. I just wondered why that was the case, because that was a point that was agreed by the leader of the council at the last council meeting.
I don't know. Matt Finch, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sorry, my connection's not great up here. Could Councillor Harris just repeat the question?
On page 158, members were consulted or identified. At the council meeting, it was agreed by the leader that we should identify the support or not support against those items, so that we could be clear that there was a majority view in favour. They haven't been identified though.
Okay, I'll pick that up and take that away for Councillor Harris and come back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Okay. Anybody got anything to say on the forward plan? We'll try and get a little bit more done on the childhood obesity going forward as a work
Chairman,
to be done for this committee. Yeah, Jono.
Just a quick one. I know it's been agreed, but can we get it on the forward plan that as soon as that report comes in for our for the land and what we own, it does come back to the committee ASAP. And the reason I'm being a little bit adamant about it is it's something me and David Payne tried to get for 4 years, and I know they're looking at it. I just know how long things can take. If it's not on the forward plan, can we just have it there so we are aware of it, if possible, Chairman?
I will, Jono. Whether it comes under our remit and not the Economic Development Committee, I'm not sure, but I will try for that and see whether it is. Sorry?
I appreciate that, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I'll look into that and see whether we can bring it forward onto this committee, because I agree with you. We need to get the terrier up and running and know what assets we do have. Donna, good evening.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It may well appear on our next agendas, but obviously we've had an update today on the swimming pool. Will that be a regular feature now on our agendas as we get closer to that date of June?
So I just missed that. Sorry, you broke up on me.
Sorry, Chair. So I've got really bad Wi-Fi, I think. Yeah. With the swimming pool coming closer to build or completion, will we get an update on the agenda, each agenda meeting we have at Leisure and Environment going forward, or does it need to be on the forward plan, or will it just appear on an agenda each time?
I would think as progress goes forward, we've spoken about it tonight, and we can mention it, but it can on the forward plan as anything with leisure centre, update on leisure centres. But I'm sure, especially you, because it's in your neck of the woods, we're kept up to date with everything's happening. But I know you were able to get on earlier, but it is on track for opening early to late summer next year. And I think the steel infrastructure is going in at this moment in time. So I think people, the local residents will be actually seeing, no, it's actually something constructed there to look at, so they can see the infrastructure going in. So that will hopefully raise awareness of what's happening. I think Matt, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's just to say that I'm sure that through your regular updates you can keep the committee updated, subject to restrictions and conditions changing. I would hope that as the development moves into next year, we might be able to find some slots to take or offer to members of this committee and the opportunity to come and actually tour the facility. So, we'll look to build in some of that into next year as well, as I say, all subject to restrictions and national guidance at the time.
Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think that brings us to the end of the committee. Neil, you hadn't got anything to say on health and wellbeing, had you?
No, I haven't, but I've just put my hand up because it was related to health and wellbeing. Just going back to the comments on obesity figures and performance, can I suggest that we bring it just as an item forward to the next meeting in January? I think it is January. That will present what metrics are going to be used so we understand then what we'll be getting as a later report, because understanding what's going in is just as important as what's coming out, because you mentioned national figures earlier, and yeah, there's an overarching national figure, but how you're actually going to track how children are measured, at what age they're measured, how we're measuring them, because we've got schools outside the district that would be really difficult. We've got to make sure we can get the data from there, etc. So it is a very, very complex thing that has to happen. I just wondered if we can get some understanding of what we will be measuring and how it will be measured, even if it's in January meeting cycle. Obviously, I'm not expecting a report by then.
Lovely. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's something we can do some work on for January meeting. Yeah. Thanks for that, Neil. Anybody else any other comment to make? If not, I thank you very much for your attendance, and I'd say wish yourself journey home, but we're all at home anyway. So and hopefully our computers will be behave better next time. I'm sorry I lost you halfway through the meeting, and thanks to Neil for taking over. So see you all soon. Good night.
Good job. I got good connection. Good night.
Night, Chairman.